Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Wednesday, January the 20th, Pope Francis appeals to all nations to work towards a world without nuclear weapons. The bishops of Central America appeal for protection for thousands of migrants travelling in caravans towards the United States. And Joe Biden is officially ushered in as the 46th President of the United States. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. Pope Francis on Wednesday appealed for all nations to work towards a world without nuclear weapons. His appeal during the general audience comes as the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is due to come into force. Christopher Wells reports.
Pope Francis' appeal came 2 days ahead of the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, also known as the Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty. The accord is the first legally binding international agreement to prohibit signatory states from developing, testing, producing, stockpiling, stationing, transferring, and using or threatening to use nuclear arms. Referring to their indiscriminate impact, Pope Francis said nuclear weapons strike large numbers of people in a short space of time and provoke long-lasting damage to the environment. He encouraged all states and peoples to work with determination to promote the conditions necessary for a world without nuclear arms. The best way to do this, Pope Francis said, is by contributing to the advancement of peace and multilateral cooperation, which humanity greatly needs. The Holy See became one of the first nations to sign the treaty when Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, the Vatican Secretary for Relations with States, signed the treaty at UN headquarters in New York on September 20th, 2017, the first day it was open for signatures. It reached the required 50 signatures in late October 2020 and comes into force on January 22nd, 2021. I'm Christopher Wells.
The bishops of Central America are asking governments to protect the rights of thousands of Honduran citizens travelling in caravans toward the United States. Many of them encounter increasing threats to their lives and security, as well as serious humanitarian challenges due to shortages of healthcare, sanitation, food and shelter. Father Benedict Mayaki reports.
The Episcopal Secretariat for Central America, SEDAC, has called on political authorities to respect the human rights of Honduran migrants forced to flee their country due to the devastating effects of 2 hurricanes, unemployment, and situations of violence amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. According to initial estimates, approximately 9,000 Hondurans have crossed the border into Guatemala. This mass displacement has, in some cases, led to tensions and clashes with police, who have reportedly applied the use of tear gas to stop the flow of people. We recognize and respect the legitimate rights to sovereignty of the countries involved in the transit of these migrants, SEDAC said in a statement issued on Tuesday. However, in the name of political charity promoted by Pope Francis, we ask that their human rights not be violated and that there be a deeply humanitarian attitude towards them regardless of their migratory status. The bishops, recognizing that the migration of the Honduran citizens does not affect only one country, urged the governments of Mexico and the entire region to work together comprehensively and humanely on the regional migratory reality. The bishops further appealed for the respect of family units as well as the migrants' rights to access to the territory and the non-refoulement of all persons who have a special need for international protection. In addition, the bishops urged governments to address the structural causes of migration, highlighting the need to develop policies that effectively provide opportunities for everyone to improve their lives in order to reduce the motivation for citizens to migrate in search of better opportunities. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
As Syrians continue to struggle with insecurity, collapsed infrastructure and an economy impacted by the war, the Pontifical Foundation Aid for the Church in Need is continuing to support Christians in Syria with a new aid campaign, which also helps those affected by COVID-19. Lydia O'Kane tells us more.
We are their anchor of salvation. That's the title of a new initiative launched by Aid to the Church in Need, which is entirely dedicated to Syria's Christian minority. As the world battles COVID-19, internally displaced people and the poor are the most vulnerable to the threat of the disease in the country, which is also plagued by high inflation and unemployment, and whose health facilities have been heavily damaged by the long armed conflict. Earlier this year, the Pontifical Foundation pledged food and health aid to Christian families in Aleppo. It also supported pastoral initiatives in several dioceses, aid to families in Homs for the payment of housing rents, and funding for the work of rehabilitating a monastery dedicated to Our Lady. According to Sister Annie Dermijan, a long-time partner of ACN projects in Syria, the benefactors of Aid to the Church in Need have already given strength and courage to many Christian families living in inhumane conditions. Last year, the charity provided 8,700 homes with electricity in the country, 900 families were supported in paying rent, 3,050 poor people received daily aid, another 9,200 got food parcels, and 6,500 students received scholarships. The Bishop of Latakia, Antoine Cherbier, received support from ACN for a 4-month health aid plan to assure assistance to those living in the cities of Latakia and Tartus in eastern Syria. Around 108 surgeries, 60 medical treatments, 1,400 health prescriptions and the activity of 5 doctors were made possible. In Homs, the activity of the Mustard Seed Centre was supported by the Pontifical Charity, which follows 90 children and adolescents with severe learning difficulties. I'm Lydia O'Kane.
It's Inauguration Day for the new President of the United States, Joe Biden. The official swearing-in ceremony traditionally takes place on the 20th of January. As Francesca Merlo reports, Biden takes his oath on the steps of Capitol Hill only 2 weeks after the building was stormed in a deadly attempt to overturn the results of the presidential election.
Months of efforts by Trump supporters to prevent President-elect Joe Biden from taking office have come to an end. On Wednesday at around noon Eastern Time, Joe Biden is due, along with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, to take his oath on the steps of Capitol Hill and be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. President Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives on a charge of incitement of insurrection in the wake of a mob attack on the Capitol earlier this month, which resulted in 5 deaths. A Senate trial on the charge could take place even after Joe Biden takes office. Pope Francis denounced the storming of Capitol Hill during his Sunday Angelus on the 10th of January. After extending a loving greeting to the people of the United States, he said, "I reiterate that violence is always self-destructive. Nothing is gained by violence, and so much is lost." The ceremonies for the inauguration of a new president will be very different this year. President-elect Joe Biden will take office as the country continues to battle one of the biggest coronavirus crises. Encouraging Americans to follow online, the inauguration program includes a memorial for those who have died during this pandemic, and recognition will be shown to those who have shown love and resilience towards those in need. So far, 402,000 people have died from COVID-19 in the United States, where over 24 million confirmed cases have been reported. President-elect Joe Biden has promised to tackle the fight against coronavirus from day one of his presidency, including eliminating cost barriers for prevention of and care for COVID-19. I'm Francesca Merlo.
Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has won a confidence vote in the Senate, allowing him to remain in office after a junior partner quit his coalition last week. But as Susie Hodges reports, Conte failed to secure an absolute majority, which means he now heads a minority government as the country battles to emerge from the coronavirus pandemic and recession.
Conte survived the vote by 156 to 140, with 16 abstentions, having overcome a similar confidence motion in the lower house of Parliament on Monday. Had he lost, he would have had to resign, pushing Italy into more political turmoil and potentially opening the way to new national elections, 2 years ahead of schedule. The crisis began when the small Italia Viva party, headed by former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, abandoned the cabinet in a row over Conte's handling of the pandemic and economic recession. It abstained in Tuesday's vote, leaving the door open for a possible return to the coalition if its policy demands are met. In his speech to senators, Conte promised to revamp his policy agenda, saying he wanted to modernise Italy and speed up implementation of a post-COVID economic recovery plan funded by the EU. In his speech to the Senate, Renzi told Conte to make bolder reforms, saying Italy is wasting its biggest opportunity since the Marshall Plan. This was a reference to the US aid package for Europe following the end of World War II. Renzi is calling for investment in the digital economy and green energy, and rejects Conte's plan to let technocrats, rather than lawmakers, decide spending priorities. The outcome of this confidence vote means Conte's coalition is badly weakened at a time when the country is struggling with unprecedented challenges. This is Susie Hodges reporting for Vatican News.
In Tunisia, young protesters who broke a coronavirus curfew to continue riots for a fifth night have been warned by the Prime Minister to stop their violence. More than 600 people, mainly between the ages of 14 and 15, have already been arrested after police clashes. The Prime Minister acknowledged their anger about a range of economic and social hardships and promised to tackle their demands. And finally, Pope Francis held his weekly general audience today in the library of the Apostolic Palace as the Church celebrates the week of prayer for Christian unity. In his continuing catechesis on prayer, the Pope reminded Christians that unity is achieved only with the grace of God and not through our own force of will. Devin Watkins has more.
As Christians around the world observe the week of prayer for Christian unity, Pope Francis reflected on Jesus' invitation to overcome discord and sow reconciliation. Speaking in the catechesis portion of his general audience, the Pope reminded everyone that Jesus did not command his disciples to be united, but rather prayed that they might be.
Ha pregato il Padre per noi, perché fossimo una sola cosa.
This, said the Pope, means that we are not able to achieve unity with our own strength. Unity, he said, is above all a gift, a grace to be requested through prayer. As the Apostle Paul observed, each of us experiences a painful conflict within ourselves in which we desire the good but find ourselves inclined toward evil. Our internal conflict, said Pope Francis, is a reminder that the true solution comes by asking God for peace, reconciliation, and unity. He said Jesus prayed for his own that they may all be one. Our prayer for unity, he added, is thus a humble but trusting participation in the Lord's Prayer. Pope Francis then asked us all to reflect on how often we pray for Christian unity. During this time of serious hardship, he said, this prayer is even more necessary so that our unity might prevail over conflicts. He said the world will only believe in Christ if Christians bear witness to the love that unites us. To pray means to fight for unity, said the Pope. This means fighting against the discord and division which the devil seeks to sow by magnifying the defects and mistakes of others in our eyes. God, on the other hand, he said, takes us as we are and nudges us toward unity. So Pope Francis invited everyone to sow unity in our homes and workplaces with the tools God has given us, which are prayer and love.
La preghiera e l'amore.
I'm Devin Watkins.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. You can join us again tomorrow at this same time for more. Meanwhile, for these and other stories, you can visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. You can also like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. My thanks go to Vincenzo Perotto in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. Bye-bye.